Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ThriveCast, another episode at Andrews University, sponsored by University Wellness, a ThriveCast. I am so excited for everyone who is joining us today. If you are a student at Andrews University, you know you can stay tuned for co-curricular credit. Hi, Hannah. Great to see you. Hello, everyone else who's joining. Stay tuned. I'm about to get our guest on air with us. I'm going to get him on here. I'm super excited for this conversation today, actually. He is so much fun to talk to, and I think you guys are going to be inspired. So stay here, join us, use the little paper airplane, that's what I call it, on the bottom right. Click it and send this live to your friends, to your contacts, to other students so that they can be here today at ThriveCast to listen to our conversation, to participate in our conversation. It's nice to see you too. Good to see you. I love it. Great. How do you get credit? So the link for co-curricular credit will be posted on the Instagram account for Andrews University after the show is done. So you just click it and fill it out, and then you get your co-curricular credit. So my name is Dr. Dominique Gummelt, and I am the University Wellness Director. And it is now time to invite our guest onto this live show. And today's guest is no other than the one and only José Bourget. And so I'm going to get him on the show right now. Let's see here. And should hopefully connect. If the technology works well, we will get started. So stay here. It's great to see you. And while we're waiting, please put in there. There he is.
Hey!
Hey! I'm so glad.
It's
good to see you too. I'm so glad this worked okay. Last time we had a little bit of a challenge. It took us like 5 minutes to connect, but this is really, really good. Awesome. Well, as you were popping on the show, I was going to tell everybody, please write in the chat where you are tuning in from, because I'd like to see who we have here. So please do that. If you're here listening to this, type into the little chat function below, where are you viewing from? We'd like to see where you're from. So Jose, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the show for a second time for the second season of ThriveCast. Thank you for being willing to be here. And I know you're a busy man because you are the head chaplain for Andrews University, amongst many other wonderful titles that you carry. And I think above all that, what I'm most grateful for is that you've been a great friend to me. So thank you for that. And thank you for coming on the show today. I just saw we have California and Brazil and Panama. Wow. And we've got Argentina is in the house. Okay, I love it. Super. Brazil always has a strong presence at ThriveCast. We've got Loma Linda is in the house. Hello, Sister University. It's great to see you as well. We've got St. Paul, Minnesota. Lovely. Hi, everyone. Perfect. Okay, Jose, you are not new to this. We've done this before. And I want to start out asking you a few personal questions because some people don't know you.
All right, let's go.
Okay. Okay. So, Jose, you get a chance right now for 30 seconds just to say whatever you want about yourself. So 30 seconds with the most essential things that you want this audience to know about you.
Yeah, so José Bourget, thank you, Dominique, for letting me do this again. It's always so much fun, not only because you do amazing and wonderful things, but because you are a good friend. And anytime I get to share with you is a blessing to me. What should you know about me? Man, I'm a foodie. I love to eat good food. I'm also a people person. I love connecting with people. And I actually I'm weird. I love connecting with people so much that the idea of a good nap for me involves laying down on a couch in a room full of people having conversations.
I love that.
That's how much of an extrovert I am. It's so soothing to be surrounded with people. I can just take a nap. It's kind of great. I also like to talk to them. So, yeah. That's,
you know what? I've known that you're an extrovert, but I never actually thought about this idea that it's actually fun for an extrovert to nap in a room full of people and just listening to them. But it actually makes sense to me. Like, I actually understand that. Yeah. So that's cool. Thank you for sharing that about yourself. And you also have a baby.
I do. And if you check on my Insta story and post, you'll see a beautiful Abigail Rose. She's 8 months old, and she is everybody says their baby's the best baby ever, but I'm quite confident when I say it, it's actually universally true. She is the best baby ever.
That's awesome. And I love that you can say that. And it's so good when a parent says that about their child. So
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Wonderful. Well, I have 3 questions for you that are also personal so people can get to know you maybe a little bit more. And also, I really like to ask these questions for 2 reasons. One, so people can get to know you, but also I want people to answer those questions for themselves. So if you're
Good.
listening right now, I want you to think about how you would answer that question, okay? So I hope at home you have a paper or a pen or whatever, and you can actually write down the questions and the answers for yourself. Might be kind of fun. Okay, so question number 1. What is your favorite city in the world and why?
Wow. At the current moment in time, my favorite city in the world is Prague. Actually, I
Prague.
visited.
Okay.
I visited for the first time a few years ago, and just love the story there. Love the architecture. Also had the best crepe with Nutella ever there from one of those street vendors. I won't say anything about Nutella, Dominique. I won't say more. I know how you feel about Nutella. In your strong love and for it. But yeah, I love the food. It had some. I mean, what was amazing about Prague is that they have food from all over the world there,
Cool.
and you can find good restaurants. But the story, and part of the story of Prague is kind of sad because they were like the 6th greatest economy in the world before World War II.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then after World War II, they got caught between warring nations, and just the country and has not been the same ever since.
Yeah.
So there's a sadness with that, but I also think when you look at the resiliency of the people, I have a number of friends from Czech Republic and other parts that are from Prague. I can't remember what the other countries are that were there, but they're resilient. I mean, they've really pushed through some things. So yeah, some deep history, some deep culture. Love the food. Yeah, so that's why I loved Prague.
I resonate with you. I visited Prague one time and I was completely taken by the city in a way that I hadn't expected. I'm in Germany, as you know, just so the viewers know, I'm in Germany right now. That's where I'm living. And so it's actually not that far to Prague from where I'm at. But it's incredible to see how the architecture changes when you drive from Germany, where I'm at, over into that direction, into the eastern parts, and you move into Czech Republic, you start seeing how the architecture changes. And in Prague itself, it's gorgeous architecture. And when you take a walk on that Charles Bridge across the river,
Right.
and you have that amazing Prague skyline on the other side. It is incredible. And it's just the pictures you can take there and just the musicians on the street
Yeah.
and just the feel, anyway, I get you. Okay, great. So Prague it is. So if you're watching and you haven't been to Prague, you can add it to your list of to visit. So, okay, my second question to you is, what person in your life has made a great impact on you and why?
This is so weird. Maybe it was because my kids were fighting yesterday. I have 2 older kids as well. But my brother Salim, and I grew up. We're Irish twins, and for those of you who don't know what that means, we're less than a year apart. We're 11 months apart in age. So growing up, him and I fought all of the time. I mean, it was just, he did not accept and understand that I was the elder sibling. And it took all of my life for him to finally concede that. No, actually, he's never conceded it. But the thing I love about my brother is he is very different than I am. He is super detailed oriented. I could call my brother right now. He could be somewhere else, and I could ask him, "Hey, Salim, what shirt you have on the 3rd drawer down in the right pile and 2 shirts down?" And he could tell me. He could tell me exactly what shirt is there.
That's funny.
I could invite him to my office and say, "Organize this," and he wouldn't have to think for a second, and he would think of the most efficient way for him to have it organized. So that's a skill set and passion that he has. But he's just as deliberate with his relationships. The amount of attention that he pays, when you're with him, you know he's listening and he's engaged with you. And he's very intentional about birthdays, and checking on the kids and checking on every single person in the family and calling them. So his level of deliberateness not only shows up in how he organizes his space, but in how he manages and interacts with his relationships, which to me is
Wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah.
What really wonderful. And it's an important question to ask, because when we think about, and this will be our subject just in a couple of minutes, but if we think about this idea that we are all as humans made to belong, and how our social connections in our lives are essential, and how all of us have people that have impacted our lives, and sometimes we don't even think about it so much, and we maybe take it for granted. It's good to take a minute to really think about who has impacted our lives and how.
Yeah.
And sometimes even the people that we're challenging in our lives have impacted us in a positive way in the long run. So, it's good to think about that. Okay, good.
Yeah,
okay, my third question is, are you ready? Drum roll. Okay.
I'm ready.
One thing on your bucket list that you have not done that you're gonna do.
Wow. That I'm gonna do. So can you hear me? I just changed earpiece.
Yeah.
I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Gotcha.
One of the things on my bucket list that I want to do, man, I actually would love to fly around the world. Not on an airplane, but I have several friends who've done this kind of trans-American, trans-Pacific journey. They get on train, it's planes, trains, automobiles. It took them like a month.
Nice. Okay.
At some point in my life, I'm gonna do that. There's some train actually, I think, from Eastern Europe that goes through Russia, Asia, China, all the way down. I mean, it would just be great to take a month vacation and just literally travel around the world. Someday I will do that, and it's on my bucket list.
I like
also
that idea, actually.
Take 4 weeks off of work.
That's a big part on the bucket list right there. But what you just said is amazing, because I thought about this a long time ago, and then I forgot about it. And now that you said it, I'm very grateful, because I think that's something I want to add back to my bucket list too. Like you said, get around the world, but do you use like trains, planes, whatever, just get around the circle. I think that'd be really cool. So I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to jump into our topic, because the topic, I think, is so important. And I already just kind of threw out a little teaser about this, but maybe for everyone watching, first of all, thank you for all being here. If you're just tuning in and popping in, we're glad you're here. Feel free to put your comments and questions into the chat below. This is a ThriveCast, and so this is brought to you by Andrews University Wellness, and today we're happy to have Campus Ministries José Bourget with us today. And so thriving is truly the key point of this show. It's all about that we believe that every single person has been made to thrive in this life. We've been created to live our lives to the fullest potential, because we've been created extraordinary. And I think that's the bottom line foundational piece that is important for everyone watching to know, and what basis we are building our conversation on. And so if we break down this philosophy that we have been made to thrive as humans, it breaks down into smaller categories that we have identified based on evidence-based research and also biblical foundations that are essential to move towards thriving, because thriving is a choice. So we've been created with everything we need to thrive, but whether or not we thrive is largely up to our own decisions, choices, and reactions to things in our lives. And so one of the categories today we want to talk about is this idea that we've been made to belong. So in other words, as humans, we have been made to be with people. And we're not talking about necessarily marriage. We're simply talking about we are made to be social beings. And
Right.
You said earlier you're an extrovert, and we've got introverts and all of that. That's totally irrelevant to the conversation, because
Right.
all of us are made to belong in one way or another. And specifically, I want to talk about how within this concept, this idea of generosity fits in the social context. And so that's kind of where I want to go for a minute, and feel free to take this away, really.
Yeah.
But when you think about generosity, I mean, when you hear that, when you hear the word, what does that mean to you? How do you define generosity?
Yeah, that's a good. I actually, I had to go look it up. What generosity, by definition, what the technical definition is. I think it's easier for me to articulate how it behaves. But basically, it's someone who gives, right? Who gives money, who gives time, who gives energy, who shares with others. And I mean, actually takes something that is theirs and hands it over to someone else. So it's not just of us sharing time, but it's me, for me to give of my time I think one term that I use is disinterested benevolence, which is basically, this is not a transactional gift. I'm not giving this to you to get something in return. I'm giving
Okay.
this to you for you and for you to
Okay.
keep and for you to enjoy and for you. I'm not expecting anything. And I think probably in a world and that is run economically, we are so used to transactional relationships and
Mm.
transactional belonging, right? You give something to me that now prompts me to give something back to you. But I think
Okay.
generosity is a giving without the expectation that something is going to be returned or that there's some sort of reciprocity that's happening on the account of my giving. So,
I love, sorry to interrupt you, but I
oh, yeah,
don't think I have heard this phrase that you used a few times now, but I love, like you said, this transactional relationship. I mean,
yeah,
that's a really cool way of thinking about it.
yeah. So, yeah, most of us treat relationships like credit and debit on a bank statement. Someone who isn't doesn't have a spreadsheet of how they're giving to their relationship, right? They are just they give and they give and they give. And I think the challenge is that when we think of giving, we often go to traumatic relationships, and traumatic relationships is where one person is such a heavy taker, right? So I'll
Yeah.
talk with individuals who have been in relationships where there's lots of trauma and a lot of brokenness. And sure enough, one person was always giving and the other person always taking. And that kind of burns you. And I think that we have to, when we think about being generous in terms of belonging, we have to account for the fact that people have taken advantage of other people's generosity, and that can really kind of harden us, right? When someone takes advantage of the fact of the giving that we've done to them. So I think there's a few things that we need to um, posit when we think about being generous, so that in our generosity we aren't putting ourselves in harm's way, right, Dominique? Because
Mm.
we can all
Yep.
get involved in relationships where, man, just a
Yep.
couple weeks ago, I was reflecting on a relationship that I have right now, and not a marriage, just a friendship relationship that I have right now, and I realized, man, this person is just a taker. It doesn't. I mean, there's no amount of time,
Mm.
energy, commitment, investment that I can make, and that where this person, yeah. Uh, Helps me to understand that what I'm giving them is valued by them.
Yeah.
There isn't seem to be ever enough. And so what I did is I kind of went through a checklist, internal checklist of how do I interact with this without losing the joy of my generosity, right? Because I enjoy
Yeah.
giving, right? And the thing
Yeah.
is when you give, it's enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot
Yes.
when you can contribute to something, invest in something, you feel really good about it. um, but how do you give in a way that in a world where people are going to take advantage? How do we give in a way that's meaningful?
Yeah.
Is I think a question to consider. So I'm going to go to a quick story. It's in scripture, and I think this is the first kind of lesson for us to take. There's a story in the book of Mark where Jesus observes. Sorry, I got birds in the background. I got to apologize for that.
I was like, what is that noise? I was
Yeah.
actually, real quick, is your connection okay? On my end, it keeps showing that you are like sometimes in and out, but I'm wondering if it's my connection. Are you, is
I
it
don't
good?
know. I'm seeing you move just fine.
Okay, perfect. Then we're
Is
good.
it just maybe it was the dancing I was doing? No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's this story Jesus observes. Describes her as a widow. So this is a woman whose husband has died. She's going to the temple and she's going to give what they call two mites. And the contrast is drawn between the two mites that she gives and these other guys who are fully loaded and they're dropping tons of cash into this temple treasure box. And Jesus, who in Scripture, so in the story of the Bible, is personifies God. So it was God who kind of set up this system of giving to the temple, and the temple did a number of things. So here you have the person who created this institution of giving for the temple tax, looking at this widow who gave relatively very little compared to these other guys, and he says, she gave more than anybody else. She gave more than anybody else. And she only gave like two compared to their, hundreds or thousands. So the thought that I had, how is it that the person and the God who created this system of giving for the temple can look at this person and say that she gave more than everybody else? And here's the thing, here's a safety guard that I think that allows us to be generous. When God or Jesus saw what this woman gave, he realized that she gave all that she could give, right? These other guys were given out of their abundance, but she was giving everything that she could give. So the first thing that I can do to help me to be a good giver is to also be a good receiver, right? There are some people in life who the amount that they can give is relatively small, but it's all that they're able to give, right? It's not a lot, but so I'm going to be a generous person by just accepting that this person is not a person who's going to give in abundance, but what they do give, you know what? That's all that they can give. So now I'm allowing that person to be generous, but I'm also now exercising a generosity towards them by just being content with what they can do. So I think what happens when we get into relationships that are purely transactional is it's the disappointment of expecting this much from someone when they can only give this much. If I can shift my expectation, right? If I can shift my expectation and realize, you know what, this person is not going to give this, their all is like down here, that I've just reduced the dissonance, which means I've reduced the amount of disappointment, I've reduced the amount of heartache, I've reduced the amount of pain that they're not meeting my expectations going to do. I just accept them for who they are, and that allows me to be generous. I can do that. I can give them the gift of acceptance, and that's coming out of my own generosity towards them. So I think that's one thing that I learned from reading that story. I'm gonna go walk outside. Is that okay? Those birds
That's fine if you like to. I think the birds are kind of cool. Like,
are they? Let me try this real quick. Let me go out the front door. Yeah. So I think being able to be generous to other people by accepting what they're able to put on the table. That's it.
Yeah.
Like and if that ends up in somewhat of a limited relationship, then that's fine. But I'm not gonna do good by expecting them to measure up to me. I just need to be clear about what that relationship is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is such, essential points. I mean, you brought up so many good points just now, and I think everyone listening can really right now pull out a number of key points here related to this constellation of a relationship, as you mentioned, and also this subject of generosity, how it fits in. Can you still hear us, Jose?
Yeah, I can. I did step out for a second.
Yeah, so the internet just went off, but you're back now, so that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So generosity, the way you just said that was so good because at the end of the day, you even said you can actually offer the gift of generosity to accept people for who they are. And
Right.
it's, I mean, this is a very, you know, that's thinking about generosity in a whole nother way, right? That's
Mm.
really cool. We have a comment, Jose, here I want to look at real quick from someone. Daniel writes, I always give without expecting anything back. It's hard for anyone to take advantage of me if I'm not expecting anything from them. If I'm not willing to give without receiving, then I won't give, he says. What do you
Mm.
say?
Man, I think you have a gift there, Daniel, of being able to just give, man. And that's a beautiful gift. It's a beautiful thing to be able to um, give without expectation, without conditions. It's one of the things that I love most about God is his unconditional love. He does so. Um, Almost everything in life requires that you take a step in order to receive. So even if I want to win the $1 million sweepstakes, I have to enroll.
Yeah.
But God, but the what God teaches in Scripture is He gave everything, and it's ours to reject. I mean, like he didn't say, okay, I need you to do X, Y, Z before I can love you, before I can give to you. No, he said, I'm gonna put it all on the line. I'm gonna give you every good gift. I'm gonna give you every good gift. And I think it's one of my favorite qualities about the God that I read in the stories that I read in Scripture is that God is always giving. And Daniel, that you have that is a beautiful thing. I'll admit I struggle with that. I want to give abundance, but one of the things that I realized. Let me share this quick story. There was a particular individual in my life that needed some help, and I knew that they were in a place where they were very dependent. I had no bloodline relationship to this person. I had no necessarily moral obligation, something that said that I was responsible for their state of life. But what I considered as I was navigating this particular situation is, all right, if I'm gonna be generous to this person, then really need to be generous all the way. And Dominique, here's the thing. I thought I was a generous person until this person kept stretching my generosity.
Nice. Okay.
Right. So
Nice.
they kept stretching my definition of generosity, and I realized, man, I thought I gave a lot, but I'm realizing in this situation that this giving thing can actually be really hard for some people to give into to relationships that don't always pay back in the same way, or to give at your own personal expense. It can be a hard thing to do. But as I push through, I'll tell you what, joy came in the morning because basically this individual went from a place where they were entirely dependent on other people, and over a period of 2 or 3 years, finished a degree, got a good job, started on their way, and I got to see the joy of seeing what I planted in them through my generosity of my time, my energy, my
Mm,
actual
mm,
money. And I was
mm.
like, this is exponentially blessing the world,
Nice.
because now this person is flourishing in life, is a functional member of society, and is adding value wherever they go. So I want to be, we talk about being a world changer here at Andrews University. If I want to be a world changer, sometimes that means I have to be generous to people so that
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
gift is multiplied,
Nice.
right? So if I'm able to, one word we use, we have all this Christian lingo. I try not to think in somebody else and then nurture it, and it grows and it produces more fruit. So if I'm willing to sow into somebody else by giving to them, by planting time, energy, mentorship, whatever, I have just now multiplied my gifts and what I've been given because of how it's taking root in somebody else, and they're now able to go and take off and be a blessing to others.
It's a great story and it's a great illustration. And it's actually right now showing through the stories that you've shared, through the comments that are coming here and through exploring how powerful generosity is, way beyond maybe what we might first think when we think about generosity.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, it can multiply, it can actually grow. And now you can see how it can impact the well-being of so many more people besides yourself. But we do know from health science research that when you engage in acts of generosity for other people, that there are physiological responses in your body to improve your well-being. I mean, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Wow, that is. And you can feel it. You can literally feel the joy of being able to give. I mean, and I think parents know this. I mean, I don't think I can't think of a better test of my selflessness than my own children.
Yeah.
So, like, because these guys, they're always asking for more. You know, they're always needing more time. They're always needing more care. They're always needing, and suddenly, yeah, you become aware of like, man, I could be better. I could be a better giver, and they help me to be a better giver. But you know, as you see them grow and become adults and become full-fledged human beings, there's a lot of joy in that. There's a lot of joy in seeing them overcome and contribute to the world around them.
Yeah. And I keep getting stuck on this thought that you said earlier, because I think it's an essential key point for all of us to think about, this idea that being truly generous also means that we may need to adapt our expectations and really evaluate what the other person is able to do and give. But our motivation of giving should never be receiving. Our motivation of giving should be giving and being generous, but to also be aware in these interpersonal relationships that we have, that if we are incredibly generous, that generosity may not be duplicated. And if it's not, then we, like you said earlier, we can show more generosity by accepting that and adjust our expectations. And we had another comment earlier. I don't want to lose it. I'm scrolling up. Matthew said, expect less, hope more. Expectation is hope gone wrong. So I thought that was an interesting comment. Do you want to say something?
No, I mean, I think he's absolutely right. I was just thinking to myself is that I actually think that when we're dealing about business relationships and enterprise and entrepreneurial, that's the appropriate space to expect that what you put in, you get something out. And I think the challenge, especially in Western culture, is that we then, since we're so inundated with work and productivity, we then transfer that same sort of expectation to social relationships, right? We want to apply the same thing we experience in the business world into a community world, and that's just not how community works. The way that we're going to flourish in community again is to be generous and to give without expectation and to give without wanting anything in return. I think it just affirms something in our design of self to be giving. You know what it also does is, like, someone who has nothing doesn't give. And whenever I give, it's an affirmation that I have something. You know, people in a frame of mind of scarcity don't tend to be givers. The people who have a mindset of abundance give a lot because they have plenty to give. Yeah. So giving my time, giving my energy, giving my cares to someone, that's coming out of a place of abundance, not a place of scarcity. So I think that's the flip side of generosity, is that sometimes start with the giving so you can develop that mindset that says, I have a lot. You know, I have a lot to share. I have a lot to contribute. That's why I'm giving right now.
Love it. So good. I love what you just said. That it's really the mindset of abundance. What a great sentence. I love that. And it's really, you know, I don't know how many of you journal. I don't know. Maybe some of you journal. Maybe you do. I have this journal called 6 Minute Journal. and you are supposed to spend 3 minutes in the morning and 3 minutes in the evening. And every morning you think about and ponder about gratefulness, and you ponder about how are you going to plan your day, etc., and so on. And then at the end of the day, the first question that I have to answer is, what have you done for someone else today? And it is so interesting when we talk about generosity. I think that while this idea is somewhere planted within us, I do think it requires intentionality to grow this mindset of abundance and the action of generosity, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I do. I do. That's really, really, really well said, Dominique. In our act of giving, we are able to affirm and authenticate our mindset of abundance. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like we can all think about how we can develop this generosity and how we can develop our acts of service on so many different levels, and to think about generosity more, think way beyond money. And that's what we're
Right.
doing in this conversation, that generosity is so much more than money. And what can that look like in day-to-day processes? What can that look like in our existing relationships, maybe in new human interactions that we come into? And how can we show generosity to make a difference in our lives? And we live in a time right now that is dominated by and large of negative thought processes for a lot of people for
Yeah.
various different reasons. And I encounter that every single day over here in Germany and the United States. Doesn't really matter. I think there's a lot of people that are so focused about how what's been happening is negative to them and their lives and negative to the world. And I don't know, whatever the thought processes are. And I'm not even negating that. I'm simply saying, what if we focused our energy into concepts that help us to thrive regardless of the circumstances? And one of them could be generosity. There's so many people that are complaining they don't know what to do and they're bored and they're sitting
Right.
around and they only have the four walls they're looking at. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, there's no better time than to start
Yeah.
thinking about developing generosity. What can
Yeah.
you do for someone else? What can you give right now?
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I find that one of the best ways to heal up is to actually be in service to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that people who are experiencing deep levels of anxiety or depression is they're with their thoughts too much. But if you take time and say, you know what, I'm gonna block out an hour to give to somebody else, that's one entire hour you're not thinking about yourself,
Yes.
or
Yes.
your
Yes.
problems. You actually
Yes.
are able to direct your mind outward to someone else and experience their joy. And so, yeah, I think that's another way to using generosity, exercising generosity to actually as an instrument of self-care. Isn't that crazy to think that you could do something for someone else,
Yes.
and that act of giving inherently all by itself is also taking care of you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you say that, because that is just the beauty of how we've been created, so complex, but yet so extraordinary, that
Yeah.
something like this is actually possible. And truly, I see a comment here in relation to depression. Somebody just said staying busy or going to the gym helps with depression as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. But talking about this idea of generosity, same thing, like you just said, when you spend time doing something for someone else, automatically your thoughts are taken away from yourself, because
Yeah.
you are redirecting your processes and your thoughts, and it changes your perspective. You
Yeah.
cannot change the way you think and feel if you don't change your viewpoint or your perspective. And you can only do that if you change, your surrounding, if you go out and do something for someone else. And so
Yeah.
I think this is a vital piece. So thank you. We've got so many good to the audience. I'm sorry every single one that's popping in here, but there's quite a few people. So thank you for that. Absolutely. Daniel, once again, thank you for saying that making someone else feel better always helps me in the end. Absolutely, absolutely. So this is brilliant. I love it. So we are coming to the end of our conversation, Jose, and it is always my custom to give our guests the last words in just 1 second. I just want to quickly make an announcement, and then you can finish us off, so to speak, for today. But if you are a student at Andrews University, you're watching this live, or you are watching the recording, you can get co-curricular credit for being a part of today's conversation. And the link to obtain that is in the Instagram bio for Andrews University at the end of this. So go there, click on it, and then you can get your co-curricular credit. And Jose, the word over to you, the last word.
Cheerful givers, good for the heart.
Yes.
Give abundantly, give joyfully, and enjoy a merry heart.
I love it. Thank you for those positive closing words, and thank you for taking your time to be here and for this thought-provoking conversation. So sending all of you a huge warm hug via technology, and think about all those points, and let's together make the world a better place to help us all thrive. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for the
bye-bye.
time. Bye.
Bye.